future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
I know you're inside, you're feeling so hollow.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another amazing edition. Thank you for that. I like all that applause. Welcome to another amazing edition of What's Up with Kobylt and Friends. We have another great show. We have great shows every week, don't we, Kurt?
Oh, of course.
Oh my gosh. I mean, just amazing. They get better and better. Last night I was watching the New York primary. We had my special guest, John Kobylt, KFI Radio. Very distinguished, well-known talk show host. And I always bug him at night. I'm like, so what do you think? What do you think? So I thought this was quite astonishing to watch. You've got Hillary from New York, Bernie from New York, Donald from New York, and then you've got that Southerner, and then you've got the guy from Ohio. It was interesting. He came in second, didn't he, Kasich, in New York?
Yeah, but way
behind Trump.
Yes.
What did he get? Like 89% of the delegates? Or 89?
Trump got 89 delegates. He
89
may
delegates,
end up
okay.
with 90 or 91. John Kasich, I think, had 4.
Oh,
Yeah,
and what did
so-
Cruz have? I guess
Zero.
New Yorkers do not like the Southerners. Let's just face it. I mean, he just does not resonate with New York. He
Well,
doesn't.
we both grew up in the Northeast. I never ran across a guy like Ted Cruz. I never met a guy.
He did go to Princeton.
He did, but he was an import.
Right,
But that's
exactly.
not a Northeast guy.
No.
I mean, he plays so Texas and so evangelical, and that breed just doesn't exist in the Northeast.
I know New Yorkers are just passing right by his name, so it was very interesting. They're like, him? Oh no. So yeah, so he got 0.
He got a 0, yeah.
Okay,
So-
so what does this say? Next week, where are the primaries, and what is this saying? That Trump, it looks like he's really in the lead, but can he get enough delegates to actually get the nomination?
Yes.
He can.
There's 5 states next week, all in the Northeast, and it's Rhode Island, Connecticut, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania. So they're
Okay.
all near New York. He's got double-digit leads in all those states,
Okay.
and he could get another, let's say, 80 delegates out of
Okay.
that hall because it's proportional. So we got about 90 yesterday, got 80 next week. And then there's about 10 more states scattered over the final month, including California and New Jersey at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So if he doesn't get to 1237, he's going to get really close. And
So then what happens? This is the confusing part for a lot of people.
it is very confusing.
Then what?
Well, I could go on for like several hours.
Make
but
it brief.
There is a pool of about 200 uncommitted delegates
Mm-hmm.
after the primaries are over. These are leftover free agent delegates.
Free agent delegates? Okay.
Yeah, they can sign up with whoever they want. They're not bound by any law to vote for a particular candidate.
Okay.
So then you get into the wooing process,
Right.
the dating process.
Oh.
And there's virtually no rules against it. You just can't offer an explicit cash bribe
Mm-hmm.
for the vote. And
I want that job.
that's about it. But if you want to,
Imagine what really goes on that you can't really talk about, you know?
if you want to pay for their expenses to come to Cleveland, because all the delegates have to pay for the trip.
Right.
So it could be a lot of money. It's airfare and it's hotel for a week and a lot of food and all that. Then you could say, hey, I'll pay your expenses if you become a Trump delegate. And I've already read today that some delegates are saying, "Oh, we'll take that deal,"
Without mentioning any names, you've had a couple of friends. You had one friend who was asked to be a Trump delegate. You had another
Yes.
one who was asked to be a Cruz delegate. And then I said, how can I be a delegate? Anybody's delegate. I'm an independent. So right now I'm swinging in all directions. So,
Well,
Well-
yeah, the thing is, you have to. For the Republicans, you have to join the Republican Party,
right, of course.
and you got to do that by May 23rd. And then you have to get in touch with these politically connected people to the two campaigns.
So you make a phone
And-
call and you say, I would like a free trip to Ohio. Sign me up. Is that
Right.
what goes on?
I'll make a deal with you. You pay for my trip to Cleveland. I'll vote for Trump or Cruz or whoever on the first ballot.
There's a way to get a vacation. Okay.
So odds are, barring anything unusual happening, Trump is going to come within 50, within 100 of the magic number. And then there's these 200 extra delegates floating around. If he can get, let's say, half of those, then he'll get there. And he probably will because he has a lot to offer.
Right.
He's got a lot of star power. He's got a lot of money. He could offer a lot of perks. And human nature being what it is, people like to jump on the winning team. Nobody wants to go all the way to Cleveland and have their vote not matter and be irrelevant. So I think, barring anything spectacular happening, and you never know, that he's probably going to get really close. And then between June 7th and mid-July, he'll get the rest of them. This happened with Gerald Ford back in 1976. He and Ronald Reagan were this close. And Ford was down. He needed 100 delegates.
Right.
And he got the 100 delegates in that 6-week period between the end of the primaries and the convention. And the guy who was on that delegate gathering team
Right.
is now running Trump's campaign.
He's still around.
He's still around.
Good heavens.
40 years later, and
Wow.
he knows how it was done.
I mean, notice I'm thinking he's what?
Yeah, well-
I'm thinking there was a mistake there or something. He must have been awfully young, or he's
Yeah.
in awfully good shape to be around 40 years later and to be trusted.
Yeah.
40 years later.
His name's
okay?
Paul Manafort, and he took over
I
a
want to
few
have
weeks
him
ago.
on the show. He would be an
Well,
interesting
he's
character.
the one. He's the guy who tamed Trump, because as of a couple of weeks ago, Trump was spinning out of control.
Okay, interesting you said that. Last night, Trump was saying Governor Kasich,
Yes.
Senator Cruz, and I thought, wait, is that the right guy?
No
Is it
more
the-
Lion Ted.
No more Lion Ted. I
Little
found that-
Marco,
right,
Crooked Hillary.
You have to say the little Marco was kind of fun. I
I
will
know.
never forget that. That will
No.
play for eternity. The little Marco and the hands. It's like, look at these hands. And I mean, that was just hilarious.
Yeah,
Really, when you think of the way this all started, and now, of course, he's a little more dignified with the titles. So,
I think between him and Trump's children, and they had a grand meeting a few weeks ago, and they got through to Donald.
they
saying,
are clearly more dignified.
get
those
off
kids.
the Twitter at 2 a.m.
But are they not? I mean, his kids are pretty impressive. I know a
Yeah.
couple of them. They are. They're a lot more dignified. It's kind of like our kids. You know, when we were in Cuba, it was like, Mom, stop it. You know, these things they skip a generation. So their kids, they're gonna have the wild, crazy kids.
Yeah.
This is what I think happens. So yeah.
Well, I think Ivana probably had more to do with civilizing the kids than Donald. So anyway, so he's close. Honestly, I mean, it's really stupid to try to make predictions this year, but it really looks
come on.
It really looks like he's going to get there, because, even if he's a few short, it's hard for me to imagine that the Republican Party is not going to give him the nomination when he's won by millions of votes, and hundreds of delegates, and they're going to tell everybody who voted in all 50 states, hey, you don't matter. We're going to pick another guy.
And then it looks like Hillary's pretty much got it.
Yeah, she's real close.
Yeah. So what about Bernie? Is he going to get anything?
No. Well,
If she's smart, she will keep him on her ticket. I just don't think she can go all the way without him. I don't. If she tosses on another politician from the party, it's just the same old boring stuff. He's really resonated with people. He's gotten more people out to vote in that party. More people are talking about it, younger people, even though he's an old guy. Just what he has to say is appealing. I think if she's smart and she wants to beat Trump, she needs him.
I think she needs that energy and enthusiasm, and that's a huge youth vote. And it's impossible to determine. He loses. How many of those people say, the heck with it, I'm not voting
That's
for anybody?
That's what I'm saying, because a lot of
So-
them don't like her and don't want her, but they like him enough to go out and, cast their vote. So, look, I'm not a political strategist, although I should be and I could be, but that's what I would say, Hillary, if you're listening and your people. Get him on your
Yeah,
ticket.
they're rooted to this.
Hell yeah, they are. They're rooted to you, at least. So if they're rooted to you, they're rooted to me. But this is what I'm thinking. So this is going to be an exciting time to watch what's going to happen. And you're going out.
We're going to go to the convention, the Republican convention in Cleveland, and we're going to chronicle it day by day, because I think you wanted to know about how the balloting works.
I did.
Okay.
But you need to make it brief and make
I
it simple.
will make it brief and simple. They get together for the convention, and the first couple of days there's a lot of speeches and there's a lot of voting on rules and just general nonsense. I believe by the third day, they vote for the presidential nominee. And if Trump is truly short in the final vote, he does not get the nomination.
Right, and then they have to go to those other delegates, who are the free-floating delegates, correct?
Well, after the first round, 60% of the delegates will be free-floating, because according to the various state laws,
Woohoo!
only 40% have to vote for Trump again on the second ballot.
Right.
So there's a lot of delegates in play now in the second round. Some of them may stay with Trump. Cruz is getting a lot of these people to commit verbally that, hey, Trump doesn't make on the first round, I'll go with you, Cruz, on the second round. And that's not a legally binding promise, and and then it goes on and on. If it actually dragged out to like 2, 3, 4 ballots, and then
I don't think it's going to happen.
and then you have this impossible split, then you might get outside candidates come in. But that's
not gonna happen.
extremely unlikely.
I just don't see that happening.
No,
I
because
think Trump's going to take it in the first round. This is my prediction. But it's good to know that that's how it works, because the process is confusing.
oh, it's unbelievably complicated. I mean, they could easily just have 50 primaries. Winner of each state
Takes it.
count up the votes at the end of it.
Winner takes it, and
I
that's
know,
it.
but they have made it so ridiculous
because
they
very-
want to keep guys like Trump out of this.
That's exactly why they're doing it.
Yeah.
It's interesting that it was even set up like this in the first place. That was probably the thinking. I know you've got to go because you've got to
Yes.
drive over to Burbank to do your own show.
Yes.
So thank you for
Well, I
being
hope
here.
I
and
was
sort of-
helpful.
You were. Thanks for being here and
All right.
straightening this out. This is how it works out there. And we've been watching, and maybe we'll have you back next week after
Happy
the
to be here.
primaries. The other primaries, what you said, Pennsylvania, Maryland,
Yes.
Delaware.
5 big ones on
Yeah.
Tuesday. Yeah.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
See
Thanks
you
for
later.
being here. All right. Thank you. Where's his applause? He deserves it.
Oh, of course.
For coming in. Thank you. I really wanted to have that at the top of the show because, I thought the New York primary, especially being from back east, was a big deal. I wanted to sort of examine it, and he knows it. He studies this. He walks up the stairs with his iPad in his hand reading about this stuff. So anyway, but our next guest, Dr. Harris Cooper, you on the phone?
I am.
Oh, thank you for being here, and thank you for holding on for a couple of minutes. Are you kind of glued to what's going on out there politically this year?
Am I glued to it?
Yeah.
I follow the newspaper and the news on television.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm glued to it. It's not fun.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to say the least. It's been a very
It is.
interesting year. There's no doubt about it. Now, I have 3 sons, and this is a topic that I'm very passionate about, which is homework. And you have done many, many studies. And why don't you tell us, Dr. Harris Cooper, what the thoughts are, what the common thinking is about homework, and what your studies have shown.
Sure. Well, what we did first, and most importantly, was we did a review of all of the studies that other people have done.
Smart.
It's called a research synthesis or a meta-analysis. And it takes the results of them, the statistical results, and actually combines them together.
Okay.
And what we found was that kids who do homework do better in school, kids who don't.
Mm-hmm.
But like so many things in life, you can have too much of a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a point at which homework tops out in terms of how much it will help a kid. After giving a talk one time, I had a teacher come up to me and say, that sounds like the 10-minute rule. And in fact, what the research shows is perfectly consistent with the notion that the proper amount of homework for a child or an adolescent is you can get a good anchor based on taking their grade level and multiplying it by 10 minutes. So for kids in first grade, it would be basically 10 minutes of homework, second grade 20, and so on.
Are you
up
talking
to-
per class though? Because I notice with
No.
my kids, I know, but then what happens, in my opinion, is the other teachers don't check to see how much homework that the other teacher is giving, and then my kid is sitting up at night for quite a few hours doing his homework, and it definitely happens in my class. So
Cool.
much of what I read happens in my home. There's no doubt about it. And when you're supposed to get maybe 15 minutes, 20, or even a half an hour, everybody's giving that and then some, and then they've got 4 or 5 hours of homework. And my kids are smart kids, and they're not just messing around in their room; they're doing their work. What do you say about that? When maybe
Well,
they're not checking in with each
that's-
other.
That's not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at homework policies, most of them will say, for high school, that kids should be doing about half an hour for each academic subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
So most kids are taking 4 academic classes like English, math, algebra, science, etc. So that would work out to about 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some kids, and your kids may be among them, are taking honors classes or advanced placement classes, and they can expect to get a little bit more. It's part of the commitment of taking the more rigorous academic courses. But what the research suggests is that at about 2 hours is when kids top out, kids in the later grades of high school, and that kids who are doing tons more homework than that aren't achieving any better than kids who do the 2 hours.
I absolutely agree with that. I even wonder if it's even helpful in middle and high school, because in high school is when you really need to sort of recalibrate where your head's at all day. You know, you've got the hormones going on, and I think it's really important to go and work out however one does that, whether they're playing an after-school sport or whether they just want to come home and do, you know, a walk around the block or something. You need that personal, private time for your head just to sort of reorganize your thoughts, don't you think?
It's more than that. It's just leading a balanced life, and you know, to take a musical instrument, learn a musical instrument,
Absolutely.
play on a sports team, be part of after-school groups, be active in your church or the Boy Scouts or whatever, is part of learning how to enjoy life and be well-rounded and balanced. So,
but how do we get this out to schools? A lot of times schools, I think, will talk about this and they'll stand up and lecture about it, but then they're still going home with a lot of homework. And I am completely agree with you. A lot of times in my own house, we can't even sit down to eat together to talk even for 10 or 15 minutes until after 11 o'clock, because after school you've got some sports, if you do them, or a musical instrument or some kind of involvement. Then you're doing your homework. They're exhausted. Maybe they nap. It's 11 o'clock. How do we start to turn around the way schools are doing this?
Well, the important thing is to talk with teachers and administrators. And again, in many instances, you'll look at the school policies and you'll see that this is what the policy says, and there isn't the proper coordination between the teachers, and that's what the parents have to work on. And, you know, it's like anything in human nature. You don't want to do it in a confrontational way.
Right.
You don't want to make a teacher who's a professional feel as if you know better how to do it than they do. But you also want to make sure that they understand that you're in this together and you both want what's best for the kids, and you try and work that out. Lots of educators, if you were talking to a high school advanced placement chemistry teacher, they would tell you we don't have that much freedom in making these decisions either.
Right, because they're teaching to a test, pretty much.
Exactly, and the curriculum can actually dictate in some classes what homework assignments should look like. So we're going to say that there's something for the teachers to do. That communication and talking with the administrators is very important. It's also important for parents to make sure that they're not applying a great deal of pressure to their kids, especially when it comes to the race to get into the best colleges and universities in the country. So if you ask kids about it, they will point as often to their parents as the source of the pressure that's on them as they do to their educators.
Mm-hmm. You know, and I also read somewhere where it says in a culture that's so dominated by homework, we're forgetting just about joy. And I think that's really true. Somewhere along the way, we're forgetting about just, you know, the family time, the little bit of family time. You know, we try as hard as we can to carve out. And like I said, it ends up very late at night. But that seems to be whittled away, especially with social media. And now people are on their computers and phones. And I know you say put it aside, but everyone seems to be on that too. That's a whole added layer of what's happening at home now too.
Yeah, the social media, again, there are a lot of families in which it appears as if a child is doing 5 hours of homework a night, but what they're really doing is flipping from their homework to their Facebook page or their,
Snapchatting and
or whatever, and they're going back and forth. If they actually attended without the social media, the homework would go quicker. parents can't let a kid go into their room, close the door, and say, I'm going to go do my homework at 4 in the afternoon, and then come back at 9, and the kid says, I'm still doing my homework, and immediately make the
Assumption
that means they did not 5 hours of homework.
I ran
So-
into this with my first kid. I knew he was on Facebook a lot, and I'd say, come on. I know that you can't be doing this much homework. Then he finally fessed up to it. And it's true. If maybe even compartmentalize if possible for kids, okay, I'm going to do my homework, and then at the last 10 or 15 minutes of the hour, I'm going to dedicate it to going back and talking to my friends. And then that's a lot of discipline, though, that we're asking them to do. But they have to figure out a way to do it.
It's important. It's an important discipline to learn.
It
too.
certainly is. It certainly is.
Part of what homework is supposed to do is to help kids, and I know this is going to sound funny in this context, but it's to help kids to learn time management. And if you want to talk about something that really ought to be taught in school that isn't, it's the study skills and the time management, which should be happening in the earlier grades. And there are some schools that help kids with logs and ways to assist them in that way. But really, learning how to study, learning how to learn, and learning how to be disciplined, especially when they're just reaching adolescence, can be an incredibly important skill. You have it, I'm sure, and you know how to work in different environments at different times. So you get on an airplane, you know what kind of work you can take with you to read. There are some things you have to do where you have 2 hours and you have to devote your full attention to it. There are some things you can do with music on. There are sometimes when you need to get up and take a break, and you've learned how to do it. It's part of being a professional, and if you're a successful professional, you've conquered that skill. And schools should teach that as well, and parents should help their kids learn those skills. And homework is one way to do it. It's one of multiple components.
And then, of course, if there's too much homework, kids are losing sleep. And then if they're losing sleep, they're getting anxious, and then they can't perform the next day. I mean, it really is. I feel as though homework has stepped up since I was a kid. Is that possible?
Well, what's actually happened is there really hasn't been that much of a change, believe it or not, in the amount of homework that kids are bringing home. There's been a little bit of an uptick in the very earliest grades that relates largely to reading, because we've learned that reading skills are so important, and early reading skills, teaching kids how to read when they're young, is really important to their future success.
What if you have a kid who really doesn't like to read and doesn't want to read and will do almost anything to sort of get through it? How do you get through that one? Because
Well,
you're right.
that's
The reading is very important in most subjects. You need it.
Yes, but the love of reading, this is a personal opinion, and the way I brought up my kids, the love of reading starts out with what they're reading. There are some things that kids want to read, and especially when they're young, the kinds of materials that they're asked to read are things that they have an intrinsic interest in. That will help them understand and learn how to be good readers. The love of reading is really important, and there's no better way to teach kids how to read than to have them read things that they would read. They wanted to know what it said.
This also leads me, though, to different kinds of learners. I told you earlier I have 3 sons. If they knew I was talking about them, they would not be thrilled. But what the heck, they're not listening. So one of them would enjoy reading, theater and plays and literature. The second one, he'll read anything. The third one, it's a chore to try and get him to read. So we used to get him baseball books and football books because he likes sports. And even that was difficult. So now he'll read statistics on sports. And that was our way in. So you're right. You have to figure out a way to get them interested as best you can. That's not an easy job for the parent or the school. But sometimes I feel like schools need to recognize that not everybody is the same kind of learner. And then how do you fit those kids in, don't you think?
It's unquestionable that kids enjoy different things and learn in different ways. And that is another thing that schools could probably do a better job at. If teachers would be calling and they'd scream at me for assuming that this wasn't the case when in many instances it is. And that's giving kids choices, especially
Such
when
as?
they're young.
Like what kind
well,
of a choice?
Well, read this book on baseball or this book on a scientist. And whichever one you want to read, go ahead and do it.
Oh, I like this.
Here, books are leveled so that the difficulty of the reading the teacher can discern what books the kid will be able to read on their own.
Mm-hmm.
But then within that, they can be given choices. And if they're given choices, with young children are given very few choices in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And just the fact that they got to choose becomes a motivating factor.
I don't believe that we had that in my school, my kid's school. I don't think so anyway, but I like this idea. I don't recall that.
Some teachers do it. They'll have, in third grade, they'll have stacks of books, and they'll say, you can go pick a book out from there to read. And the kids can look through the books, and they're all at an appropriate level for how the kids' reading skills are. But the topics can be very different, and they can go through it and pick out the one they want. And then they'll say, well, I chose this book. They'll have an intrinsic interest in it.
Do you believe that teachers and schools, they're listening, and that, in fact, people are, at schools and teachers are assigning less homework because some of the studies are showing that the stress on these kids is not working?
Well, this may surprise you, but several years ago, the MetLife Foundation did a national survey of teachers and parents, and one of the questions, and students, and one of the questions they asked was, how much homework does a child bring home every night? Too much, too little, or just the right amount? And about 60% of the parents said just the right amount. About 25% said too little. And 15% said too much. Now, to go back to a question that you asked earlier, and I didn't get to quite finish it, was when you get to high school, what you get is a great deal of variability in how much homework kids bring home.
Mm-hmm.
So your family, and there are many families in which there's a great deal of emphasis on academic achievement. And for those kids, the choices that they're making about classes to take and the signals that the teachers are getting from parents suggest that there should be a lot of homework, and that's happening for that segment of the society. There are other segments where the teachers have essentially given up on homework because it doesn't get done and they don't have parent support.
Wow, not in our school.
You really find both of those of roughly equal frequency occurring. We hear from the parents and the kids who are stressed out about it because they are the parents who are very involved in their kids' lives and they're vocal. So we hear more about that end of the spectrum. And we know that in high school, the variability in the amount that the kids bring home can be very different.
Final question, but I need to know, is there a real difference between the private school community and the public schools out there?
I don't have any firm data on it. I can tell you from my own experience and the number of times I've been asked that question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you'll find that the private schools are at the upper end.
Mm-hmm.
The best public schools will look a lot like private schools, but the private schools, they make a commitment to parents that we're going to get your kids into, we're going to get them ready for the best colleges and universities. So there's a pressure and an expectation there.
A lot of pressure. And I've just been through it. I mean, I have two kids. One is in college and one's just about to go next year. And I don't quite understand that because each kid is suited to go to a different school. Not every kid is suited to go to one of the top colleges and universities. I don't quite understand that level of competition, and I don't. And we tried to stay out of that, but our kids, they were very good students on their own. But for those parents who were pushing to get them into a certain college or university, you're right, it stressed them out. The kid didn't belong there in the first place. And then you end up finding at the end of the day, they end up where they should go. After all that stressing and pushing, they end up where they should be anyway. Anyway, Doctor, thank you so much, Dr. Harris Cooper from Duke University. Thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Have a good day. Well, this is actually kind of interesting because my husband and I, we have on now Dr. Kathryn Foster.
Hi.
Oh, I couldn't wait to talk to you all day. Actually, I kind of wish we had you almost at the top of the show because my husband was actually in here talking politics. That would have been really fun. But you know what? I must have you back when he's on the show. I must. Because I have to tell you, homework and dealing with kids, he and I dealt with that differently. And it was a real source of disagreements in our home. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I really enjoyed reading up about you and your take on relationships and on men. I really did. I'm going to have you on for an entire hour next time, if you don't mind.
Okay.
But tell me a little bit
we'll
about.
figure that out.
Yeah, please tell me a little bit about you and what you write about men. This latest book.
I am a psychologist in Texas, and I've written 5 books. The one I'm talking about today is What Women Want, Really. And this is kind of a weird book because, it's written for guys in a concise, bullet-pointed manner because guys don't buy that kind of book usually. But it's meant to be read by couples, preferably aloud and preferably a couple times a year or as needed. It kind of gets everybody on track again, and it includes discussion questions that make it easy for both to talk about what they need in a neutral way. I've been doing marriage and family counseling for 27 years. And, the reason I really wrote the book is because 2/3 of divorces are initiated by women.
Right.
And I believe that's because women expect something that from men that for men is a learned behavior. It's not that it's hard to do. It's just not intuitive for guys.
Kurt.
So the book.
My board op, Kurt. I'm making sure you're listening because you're newly married.
Yeah.
Just listen to what she has to say. I've known my
I'm
husband
listening.
since like my early 20s, and there's a whole arc to relationships also. But go ahead because I have so much to say about this. Go ahead. So
okay.
let's face it.
Before I get too deep, let me define what I mean by women and men. Okay, which seems like a weird definition, but women. I'm talking about the greater population of females, not everybody, but those who are hardwired and strongly motivated by empathy.
That's me. Let's talk personal. That's me.
Yeah,
okay.
Because of that, they attach to discern another person's feelings. Now, let me contrast that for a sec to guys. Okay, most men are hardwired and strongly motivated to value and assemble systems. Now, that's why they like work so much in sports, because a system can be a pencil sharpener, or it can be rules of a game, or anything that's fixed and orderly that they can predict, okay? Now, they detach to observe and figure out a system. So women's natural way of being has to do with attaching. Men's natural way of being has to do with detaching on and off. Now, since women don't really detach, they can misread when a guy, let's say they have a great date and there's a lot of rapport, and then he doesn't text for 3 days.
That woman's probably flipping out. Oh my gosh, should I text him? What happened? Was I not this?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. A woman needs more signs of attachment because she doesn't get the idea of detaching like that.
Well, you can also really stretch this into, sexuality. When men and women are together, for a woman, it's a bonding experience. And for a man, very often it's, oh, wow, that was great, right? Wouldn't you say? I mean, it carries over into many, many areas of one's life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. It does. And we know now from going back to women and what they are, sophisticated MRIs have shown us that by the age of 17, a girl's brain transforms so that when she processes negative emotion, that processing is done now in the cerebral cortex, where higher mental functioning takes place. This is the highest brain. And so she can easily explain what she feels and why she feels what she does. She can hook words up to feelings and can reason through her emotion. It's kind of like by the age of 17, she has this emotional intelligence leap, and it makes her different. She now
the guys are still behaving like toddlers, pretty much, correct?
Well, the processing of negative emotion remains in the primitive brain for men. So men are often concerned about being reactive with their negative emotion. We're not talking about positive emotion here, like love and joy and peace and stuff like that, but negative emotion. Okay, so when she begins talking about her negative emotion, which a woman likes to do, he can try to calm her down or change the subject or fix it really fast, so she doesn't have to go there. Because for him, it's a different kind of experience. Now, men and women don't intuitively know that.
Can you give me more
right?
specifics? Because this is almost like scientifically looking at it, and I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute,
Yep.
let me think. Give me more specifics about what you're talking about, because basically, women, operate with emotion and feeling, and men are just sort of go each day and sort of don't, and then the two sort of need to merge in a way so
Yes,
that they can
yes.
figure each other out, right? I
They-
mean, that's really what it comes
do.
down
They
to.
They do. And a man or a woman loves a man who asks her about her thoughts and feelings. Okay, there's a bridge in all of our brains that connects the right hemisphere to the left, and this is really a kind of a gross description, but the left brain has to do more with our sequential thoughts and facts. The right brain has to do more with relationships and feelings. Now, a woman's bridge, though, is 4 times as thick as a guy's. 4 times. So that gives her access to and get this, 412 different feelings that have been identified. So as every guy knows, this makes a woman kind of complicated. And she feels her feelings more strongly and more often.
Okay,
than a guy.
stop a minute. So
Yes.
she's got those 400 and some odd feelings that she can sort of
Yeah.
access, and the guy is on the other side of the bridge with what, like 1 or 2 feelings, and then he's got. How do we bridge these two? Because I'm surrounded by 3 sons. I have a husband. I have many male friends. Some are straight, some are gay.
Yeah.
They're all over
Yeah.
the spectrum. And I do really believe that they think differently than
They
women.
They do.
And I
So-
love men,
so-
and I love the way they think. But sometimes I'm trying to figure
Yeah.
out, like, how do I not, like, I don't know, how do I maybe not piss them off? That's probably the wrong way to say it. We're just different, right?
I think to have a romance, a guy has to know that there's this difference, and that's why I wrote What Women Want. Really, kind of 4 guys, but meant to be read by couples, because he's got to learn this, and actually, a whole lot of women have to learn this about themselves too. But let me give you a concrete example.
Yeah.
I say it this way: as she's talking, her feelings rise. So she gets more involved in what she's saying. Now, I compare this to the feelings a guy might have when having sex. The intensity gets stronger.
Right.
So if a guy interrupts a woman when she's talking in a feeling kind of way, it's like if during sex she jumped up and said, I'm going to run down to the kitchen and just get a cup of coffee.
God, could you imagine?
It would
Kurt?
feel pretty dismissive, right?
Oh, pissed off. I don't know what
Yeah.
he'd feel. He'd be like, "What? Are you kidding?" I mean, could you imagine that? I wouldn't do that. But.
Right. And another example I'd give is that, a guy's feelings tend to be more connected with his behaviors rather than with talking. So
Right.
it's a brain difference. So there's this old joke that a wife of 25 years asks, "Do you love me?" And the husband says, "Of course. Haven't I gone to work every day?" Now, his comment is not going to register with her on any kind of a deep level. She has to have words to understand if he loves her. And that's just because of brain differences.
But how do you teach someone to have words? I actually think it's difficult. I just think men are what they are, and teaching them to have their words, it's almost like it's robotic. Like, "Oh, yes, dear." You know what I mean? It's almost like.
Well, there's some specifics. I mean, and like I say, this book is really written for guys, so it's skill-oriented.
So what do you teach them? Some skills, like how to
Well,
communicate better
like
with a woman.
One skill is for guys to know that women have special rules that men don't know about.
All right, what are they?
And-
What are our rules?
Well, one of the big ones is that if she asks him a question, which she'll often do because she's trying to promote dialogue, the guy needs to return the gesture and ask the same question of her. Like, if she says, "How was your day at work?" he needs to answer, but then he needs to say, "Tell me about your day." See, if a woman asks what a guy thinks about something and he gives his opinion, but he never asks her for hers, it can register as a slight, and over time that can build up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. I think another thing is guys need to learn to stimulate conversation. And there's skills involved in that. One is asking open-ended questions. It gives her a chance to share more deeply. An open-ended question is one that you can't answer by saying yes or no or with a couple words. You have to respond more deeply. So it encourages the kind of emotional and mental exploration that women like.
So, okay, wait a
if
minute.
you-
So
yeah.
should a woman like sort of type up these little questions that a guy should be asking each week or day or whatever and stick them on the refrigerator? And as the guy's walking by or running in there to get a sandwich or a beer, he's like, number 2. Okay, honey, tell me more about your day because, just as a reminder.
It does need to be more
Reinforced,
concrete.
right?
She doesn't have to reinvent the wheel, though, because I've typed all these up in the book.
Okay, so like give us the top, 5 or 10. And are you
well,
listening, Kurt? Are you
something
listening?
like,
Of course, I'm-
what did you decide to do? Or how do you feel about that? Or what were your impressions of him? Or, what are you feeling about her? What do you think you should do? It's those kind of open-ended questions.
Mm-hmm. Also, men and women perceive things differently. Here's what I get a lot from my friends. I'm one of these girls that like everybody will call thinking that I've got everything, everything down and I have the answers. And I'm thinking, boy, if you had any idea, I just don't reveal too much. But I'll get a call from a friend and she'll say, we argued over the garbage. I mean, that is such a dumb thing to argue about. It's like, just take the garbage out. Maybe if the woman asks, he'll get pissed off. He wants to do it in an hour. She wants it done now because it doesn't smell right. Now, do you teach her do you just say to her, be quiet and take it out yourself? Or just be patient? Or do you say to the guy, take the garbage out? Where's your answer? Which one?
Yeah, well, I think that if he senses that she is so frustrated with him, then he feels like because she's told him to take out the garbage 100 times, then he
feels
starts
attacked.
feeling like he can't please her. And the secret with men is that their testosterone, remember that men have 2 gallons of testosterone circulating through their body every day.
Wow.
That testosterone causes them to seek wins, W-I-N-S. And so if she says, it would really make me happy if you take out the garbage, that would feel different to him.
Oh.
If she said, I would just love it if you take the garbage out, that feels different, because what happens is, and this is a bigger deal than you think, because when a guy senses that he can have a win or that he can be successful as a relationship partner, then his dopamine immediately goes up, and dopamine's that thing that makes us feel happy and interested in life and a little bit more energetic, and his testosterone goes up, which causes him to feel more masculine, more efficient, more effective, more confident.
All you have to do is say, it would make me feel so good if you could just take the garbage out, as opposed to, can you take the garbage out? So it's really that simple, because there is a way of doing this. I agree.
Well, and I noticed that your voice got sexier. I have to say that, and I want to comment on that.
Go ahead.
If there's really something, maybe more than garbage, maybe not, but if she words it in terms of sexuality, it will get his attention and motivate him. Because men are strongly, powerfully motivated sexually.
I figured that out a long time ago. It's like, please, the garbage just doesn't smell well. Can you take it out? It's like all of a sudden, boom. But if I ask a different way, forget it. So girls, I hate to say it, but there's one. So that should be on your list.
Yeah. I feel so much more interested in sex when you blah, blah, blah.
When you take the garbage out.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Remember that men are 4 times more likely than women to see sex and emotional closeness as the same thing.
They are?
Yeah. That's how they see it. That is emotional closeness in a lot of ways for a guy.
For a guy? Okay, everyone that I talk to says no way. It's all about like having a good time, and if they're single, maybe hooking up. If they're married or they have a girlfriend, it's like I don't know. I didn't realize. Is that true, Kurt?
The interesting thing is that men can do both. It's so confusing for women. Men are more likely to be able to be relationally or sexually recreational, but men are also very. They're the ones who made up the phrase, let's make love. In other words, having sex creates the emotion called love. that's a male idea.
So the guy made up that phrase, make
I'm
love?
assuming. I don't really know, but
Is this
I
true,
think so.
Kurt?
I didn't
Because
originate the
he
word.
sees it as the same thing.
Okay, so basically...
Remember that it is women who are leaving marriages.
Right.
You know, it's women who are making the decision, even if they have kids and it will put them in a difficult place financially, and they'll be alone with those kids and etc. It is women who are leaving.
Why? Is it because basically they feel like the man is just sort of not kept up his end of the bargain, if you will? Like they aren't reaching out to try and understand what's going on with a woman? Is that it? So they
I think that's true, but I think more bottom line to that is that women expect emotional closeness through dialogue, and guys aren't oriented that way. They can learn it, and guys love learning skills that make them successful. But, you know, whoever stops to teach guys this? You know, we don't have any high school classes.
You need to start in preschool.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You need to now little Johnny, remember this when you talk to your mommy or your sister.
You know what the problem
ask her
is?
how her day was. I mean, honestly,
You know,
this is the way to do
we
it.
actually know from research that parents spend more time, especially moms spend more time with their sons, trying to teach them emotional intelligence, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They
Okay.
spend about twice what they spend with little girls. But see, the problem is that when boys hit adolescence, everything changes, and that's where they've got to have the education. Because once testosterone hits,
Forget it.
you know, testosterone causes you to become less relational.
Okay, I'm going to give you something personal. I have 3 boys, teenagers. Okay. There is a throne for me somewhere. They're great kids, actually. And if they maybe are a little rude, that's a situation. I'll say to John, is that okay with you? What do you think about that? And he'll say, oh, that's just what boys do. And I don't like that answer because I feel like it shouldn't really just be what boys do. Like, there should be a level of respect, right? And thoughts?
I think I would demand that. I would say, please restate.
Yeah, but what do you do? I mean, it's not just what boys do. I mean, I think boys sometimes, especially teenagers, they'll get away with stuff, and you just sort of have to put your hand up and say, no, please don't talk that way. And that's what I do, and then I'll just walk out.
Absolutely.
Because I don't want to engage any longer. I'll just walk away and then have them think about it. That's another thing.
Yeah,
you know,
Well, I appreciate mothers like you who are doing that because, and you know, you have to understand, like I said, a guy goes from 1 cup of circulating testosterone before he's an adolescent, and during adolescence it soars up to 2 gallons a day. Now, that's quite an adjustment for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, we talk about with girls PMS and moodiness and things that happen, but with guys, my gosh, this testosterone, it orients them toward the self, toward being more selfish. You know. And now we could say that in a more politically correct way. We could say that guys are more clear about what they want and more confident, you know.
All right, so basically to have an effective long-term relationship, because generally all relationships start out pretty good, right? There's that honeymoon phase and nobody's doing anything wrong. It's as you get further into the relationship that sometimes I think a woman can be pain in the neck sometimes and maybe ask for too much. You know, she's got to back it up a little too. And a man also has to do his part and understand the feelings of a woman. I think you're right. If a man can just understand that little piece, feelings, empathy, the woman will back off too. It's a two-way street, as they say.
Yeah, they have to learn about each other. And you know, the first book that I wrote, what's that called? The Naked Truth About Men and Romance. That is written. A lot of guys have read it, but it's mostly to help women get men and understand what testosterone does in the body, and so on and so forth. Then I wrote What Women Want Really, so that we could handle some of that.
I love this.
know?
Now, how can people get a hold of it? What Women Want Really? How can we get a hold of that?
I just set up another website. It's books by Kathryn Foster, PhD.com. And Kathryn is spelled Kathryn.
Okay.
And that's where you can read up on each of the 5 books, and then you can click over to Amazon if you want to buy them.
And What Women Want Really is a quick read. It's an easy read. It's a fun read if you can both sit down together and read it, and if you can sort of like hear some of that. You know, I could also hear a guy going, that's ridiculous. You know, a lot of men will say, "Oh, I listen," and maybe the woman feels like they don't. How do you get around that one?
Well, that's why the book is written why it is. That the discussion questions in the book are ones that he asks her, which makes it different because testosterone causes a guy to want to be in charge. So if he is asking the discussion questions, it helps him stay alert.
Okay, give me one quick example because we're gonna have to go in a minute. Give me a quick example of the question he will ask the woman. Go ahead. You're the guy here.
Oh, let's see. He would ask her something like, "Has there ever been a time when I needed to listen to you better?"
Oh my gosh. Okay, next.
Another one. Let's see. Are there some feelings that you really need to share with me right now?
And you think a guy's Kurt? Will you sit down and do this with your wife? I'm serious.
Yeah, of course.
You would?
Yeah, I respect her opinion, and if I'm doing something wrong, I need to know.
Oh my gosh.
So.
Where were you?
It's a short book and it's tool oriented.
Okay, I really like this.
It relates to guys because it's real usable.
It's important. It's really very simple. The way they rephrase, the way we can rephrase as women. It's just a matter of semantics, how we talk to each other, how we respect. It's about respect, generally. That's what it is
But you
me.
have to know what you're trying to respect first.
Okay, what are we trying to respect?
Well, you have to understand the genders.
Right.
We can say that we're going to respect each other, but what exactly are we respecting? I think a woman has to respect that a guy is always looking for wins. And he responds if she says, would you text me every day at 4 o'clock to let me know when you're going to be home for dinner? He doesn't respond very well if she says, it really feels bad when I make dinner and you don't get home on time. I never know when you're going to be here, and, on and on and on, right?
Right, that's kind of like nagging, so you don't want to do that.
She does that because she's empathy-oriented, though.
Right.
See, she believes that he will, any minute now, there'll be a spark in his eye where he will get it, and he will feel for her, and then he'll change. But that isn't how men work.
Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have you come back on, but I'm going to have, a couple of men in the studio with me, and we can do like a little bit of a little bit of back and forth, and you can teach them. I'm going to have a couple of male friends of mine. I'm going to have John in. Wouldn't that be fun if we can have you back on and you can sort of teach them what to do? I love this.
You bet. We'll do it.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kathryn
Thank
Foster.
you.
And again, on your website, they can get What Women Want Really and other books that you have written on KathrynFosterPhD.com. Is that what it is?
It's books by KathrynFosterPhD.com.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on.
Okay, thank you
so much. Talk to you next time. This is really important because women are motivated by feelings, and there's different kinds of women out there. I would talk about feelings a lot, but then you have to know when to back off. Like, you can't always talk about your feelings. You just sort of have to back off a little too, don't you think?
Yeah. My wife, Stacy, she likes to kind of go inside sometimes too, where she won't even talk to me about it. She'll
so
go
then
into
you
her
lucked
thing.
out.
Yeah. And then I don't like to talk about it. So then we're like two brooding people, just not talking our feelings. And then one of us cracks and says, "You know what? We need to bridge this. We need to get through this because I don't want to stay mad at you. I love you." So.
Oh, how cute. Oh, you're so adorable. But that is the way to do it, right? Yeah. But it's actually better that maybe you're stepping back and thinking about it a little as opposed to being so reactive, because people can be that way, and particularly women, I do think sometimes they're very reactive and they're pissed off about something and they'll say something and they need to step back a little. They also need to learn how to talk to a man as well. So
she gets like that too. She's German, so she gets that temper every now and then.
Well, I'm Italian, so could you imagine that? Full-blooded.
Yeah.
But it makes for a lot of fun too. So anyway, thank you for being here. Another edition of What's Up with Kobylt and Friends. We'll see you next week.